So I'm going to call the June 21st, 2022 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Can everybody stand for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so under my announcements, we have the Girl Scouts Silver Award recipients. I don't believe, are they in my packet?
Yes.
Or the electronic packet that we'd sent?
Yes.
Okay. Bear with me a second. The agenda. I don't think I have the full packet. I just got the agenda.
It's an entire packet. It's on SharePoint as well.
All right, I'll go to the SharePoint.
Matt, does the land council need to be done before July 1st?
No, they serve at your pleasure.
I'm sorry, guys, my internet's a little slow.
There was an opportunity, so I left it alone. How do you pronounce Kaylee's last name?
I'm from Rhode Island, I know how.
Pronounce what?
Mr. Chairman, in the absence of you finding your agenda, since the town administrator knows how to pronounce half the names,
Yeah.
could I make a recommendation that he announces the recipients?
I was just going to ask that, Matt, if you could, in the essence of time, just read the names off, please. I apologize.
I shall read. The Silver Award is the highest achievement that a girl in grades 6 through 8 can earn in Girl Scouting. This is a significant accomplishment. Earning the award requires many years of challenge and commitment to service, leadership, career exploration, and take action projects. Recipients must demonstrate ability and skill in goal setting, planning, implementation relating to others, and creating a project which will benefit the greater community. The board would like to congratulate the following Douglas Girl Scouts for receiving this award: Michaela Boulette, Kaylee Chacon, Greta Colinaro, Caitlin Kelly, Kennedy McGrath, Addie Taylor. Commendations
Thank
were
you.
sent to the girls from the board, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated, Matt. So, and congratulations to those Girl Scouts. So is there anybody in the room that is here for anything that is not currently posted on our agenda? Seeing as none, I would move that we pass over the first agenda item until we do have a full board present. Anybody have any issues with that?
No.
No, Mr. Chairman, could we group them together, 1, 8, 9, and 10?
1, 8, 9, and 10?
8 is review of the code
Yeah.
of conducts, 9 is the annual appointments, and 10 is discuss the reappointment of land council.
So
I have
moved.
no,
You have no
we have a
objection?
mo-
Oh, second.
I have no objections to it at all. That's fine.
So,
Second.
okay, my motion.
And I second
And
it.
you
So Hal
second.
made the motion and I seconded it,
Okay.
Kevin.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing as none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Want a roll call on it? Since you're
Yeah,
remote?
please.
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye.
So 1-8.
All right, so we have the Rhode Island, Mass, Connecticut relay race on 8/27 amended route and possible votes.
He's not on. Do we need him here? Really?
I don't think so.
No.
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 I can contact him in the morning.
So we're just voting on the amended route? Or authorization as well?
Yeah. Now, the race is going to cross at the Southwest Main Street, High Street intersection.
And are there any concerns on the amended route from the public safety chiefs?
There was no concerns.
Make a motion to approve their amended route.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. Okay, so we have to
Number 3, can
review
we,
and approve.
number 3, can we move past that until Jean gets out of the finance committee meeting, please? She's next door.
Okay.
She'll be back in a little while.
All right, so we will put a hold on 3 until Jean's done with FinCom. Moving to number 4, review and ratify appointments and possible votes.
Just a reminder to the board, the process here is that you have 21 days from the date that I notify you of an appointment of a department head to either vote to disapprove or approve if you choose to do so. If the 21 days go by and you have not taken action, the appointments become effective. So the 3 people I have appointed are Jean Lovett, reappointment to Municipal Director of Finance and Town Accountant, Lisa Freeman to a role known as Executive Assistant to the Town Administrator and Board of Selectmen, and Christopher Pupka to Principal Assessor.
I think we should give a positive endorsement. These are 3 good people going to serve the town.
Well, I know 2 of them. I met the assessor briefly in the hallway when Jean was walking around with them.
So I'll move approval of the 3 individuals, Jean Lovett, Lisa Freeman, and Christopher Pupka.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. All right, so review and approve the development agreement with CRG and possible votes?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you saw your email, but my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is that I go over the
Yes, please.
contents of the development agreement tonight and give you 2 weeks to cogitate, ask questions of me or of council or anyone else involved in the project, and then have your vote at your July 5th meeting.
I have no issues with that.
No.
We do have one outstanding item that I will discuss at the end. The development agreement is an agreement between the town and the developer of this project. It lays out the rights and obligations of the 2 parties with respect to each other as part of their project. We have made a number of representations to the developer of things that we will complete so that their lot will be useful. They have pledged in turn to buy the lot from us, through which they had already accomplished through the bidding process under Chapter 30B. But they will consummate that transaction, and they will do other things that they promised to do in this agreement. So I will go through it very quickly. There are some recitals in Section 1, which is just a summary of the project, what it's involved in. I'll focus only on issue 1.2, or item 1.2, just so that everybody knows what the project is. 1.1 million square feet of warehouse distribution facility that will have 688 employee parking spaces, 167 loading spaces, and 227 truck trailer parking spaces. I know there's extra copies. Does anybody in the audience want one of the copies? There's two. Section number 2, there's a series of general promises. The project proponent agrees to abide by all of the subject laws in section 2.1. In section 2.2, it's a list of the permits that are required from the town. And then section 2.3, I actually wanted this in here because there's more detail about all of the building codes that will apply to a project of this size, so that nobody is surprised by anything. Not that they would be at this point with their experience. Originally, the Douglas Planning Board, in issuing conditions for this project, included a number of requirements that they do not, in many people's opinion, have the power to enforce. Specifically, items that come after their approvals. They cannot reach into business transactions and things that extend beyond their permit approval process. But you can, as the Board of Selectmen, because you are the highway commissioners, you have other powers and you represent the town. So in section 3, we have taken the traffic mitigation requirements of the planning board and made them part of the development agreement between the select board and the project proponent. I did take some liberties to write it in a way that I thought made more logical sense. So item 3.2, the proponent agrees to provide funding for pre- and post-occupancy traffic planning and monitoring studies for the project. That means exactly what it says. There will be studies done of traffic, and they will be funded by the proponent, not the town. So in item 3.3, 30 days before a major tenant occupies the building, they must provide the planning board with a disclosure of the amount of traffic they expect to generate in town. The project, as designed, will funnel all project traffic to take a right-hand turn out of their access point on Gilboa Street and force them, as a matter of geometry, to go to 146. They will not be able to easily, and certainly a semi is not going to make the swing, to turn left on Gilboa and clog up traffic at Gilboa and North or North and Main. That's where we want to keep people away from. The proponents already agreed to design their roadway in a way that doesn't make that turn possible. Having said that, where there's a will, there's a way, if you've ever dealt with truck drivers. And so if there is going to be an increase in estimated peak hour site-related traffic volumes that is materially greater than projected in their original study of 25%, then they will have to do a study, and it will be funded by them, and they will have to go through our review to determine if additional traffic attributable to the site results in unanticipated traffic impacts. And from that point forward, we'd be monitoring to see if they trigger the necessity for improvements. At that time, the project proponent, if they should trigger the need for improvements, would pay us up to $250,000 to pay for those improvements. The onus is on the town to conduct the studies. The two studies are at, I believe, is 6 months and 12 months. If the town determines that the project itself is generating traffic that triggers, it's 25% over for Class 7 trucks and higher, the project proponent will have the right to have their own peer reviewer review our study. But if there's consensus that mitigation steps are necessary, they'll pay for up to $250,000 worth of those. So there's 2 bites at the apple, at 6 months and 12 months. 3.6 lays out the statutory authority to use a 53G account to fund that. And item 3.7 is the process for the $250,000, how it will be gathered and spent. In section 4, the town makes representations about the projects that it will complete in order to make the project possible. Water infrastructure upgrades by the town, which is the project that citizens see happening now on Gilboa and North. There will also be a water main run up Northeast Main. That's a water main improvement, an extension to the town line that will allow the developer of the warehouse to connect the water line on Gilboa Street to the water line on Northeast Main, forming a loop which will greatly assist in pressure and flow of water through the water system in that part of town. There are, in 4.2, sewer infrastructure upgrades that the town promises to complete along Gilboa Street, which will go all the way to the Uxbridge Town Line. In fact, it crosses the Uxbridge Town Line and goes to the Scannell Building, which is the building that's under construction now that straddles the 3 towns. Then the town, in item 4.3, discloses the form of budget that it's using to retire the cost of the project. I'll stop here for a second just by way of update. We are well under budget so far. We are way under budget for this project, so it's running very smoothly. On item 4.4, we discuss natural gas. The town is not currently franchised for natural gas. There is no company that has a license from the DPU to sell natural gas to residents of the town of Douglas from a utility connection, from a pipe in the street. So the town and Eversource are applying to the DPU for a franchise that will allow Eversource to add Douglas to its service territory and hook up these buildings and run their lines into town. The economics of this will change, mostly for the better. I will only say that there is a project cost. Eversource is on the hook to pay for the project cost to the extent that their new customers will generate revenues sufficient to retire the original cost of the service. Anything that's unmet by the new customers is the subsidy that will either be provided by the town's MassWorks grant or CRG and Scannell in combination. So again, this is largely dependent on the usage forecast done by Eversource. Lastly, the town discloses that it has applied for a federal grant, and the federal grant will be used to defray these expenses, should it be awarded to the town.
And suppose it's not, then where's the makeup for that?
We would go back and, A, work with our project partners, our neighboring towns, our own ARPA funds, and then anything we saved from becoming in under budget on
Yeah.
pieces of the project already done.
Should that be broadened in 4.5 or something like that?
I don't know that we're there yet. I think if 4.5,
Maybe the good news will happen before.
yeah, I'm hoping we hear from them before we execute this document. In exchange for all of this work that's being done, the project proponent is not asking for any tax breaks, and that's important. So we don't have that in this agreement because they're not asking for it. Because they're not asking for it, it doesn't need to go to town meeting. That piece, the so-called tax increment financing, is not part of this agreement. In installing these large extensions of the town's utilities, we've had to confront the fact that the town does not have the equipment it needs to maintain our system. CRG has volunteered to establish a $300,000 donation account to the town that will fund the purchase of a piece of equipment called a valve exerciser which is just an automatic mechanical device that turns the valves and tests them, and if they start to hang up, it stops. It won't break the valve or break the handle, but it's recording information and how much torque it requires to close the valve and open the valve again. Good practice requires that we exercise valves annually in our water system. It's 48 turns of one valve to fully exercise it. So if one person had to exercise 20 valves in just one short run of pipes, that's 960 turns, where we really don't need the aggravation of all those workplace injuries, nor do we need to take all that time away from other services. So the piece of equipment's $99,000. We do not presently have a mini excavator, which is a small machine for working in tight spaces and digging up pipes and fixing them. CRG would purchase one of those and a trailer to haul it. The two items are $89,000 and $25,000 respectively. And then a very important need for the town is a mobile diesel generator that we could hook up to any building where we have a place to hook it up. But it would help us operate water pumps, buildings, anything that's going to draw power from a generator on site in order to complete work. Generators are in a long lead situation, but this one is about $64,000. So that's the pledge from the project proponent to the town. It's under, our estimates it will be under $300,000. Anything we don't spend after we've bought everything we said we needed, only then, if there's anything left, we'll go back to CRG. Not each individual item, only at the end.
Package.
Yep. The town promises to act expeditiously on requests for signs and other licenses and regulations. And then you have your typical, notice, force majeure clause, breach, a release of personal obligation in 9.4. 9.5 is, once again, the terms that deal with breach, compensation. 9.6 is choice of law. In Massachusetts, we can only choose to be held to the courts, the Commonwealth, which is what we pledge there. 9.7, the agreement is the entire agreement. 9.8, the parties will execute, deliver documents, seek approvals, take other action, whether or not explicitly set forth herein, as quickly as possible.
See, there's a possibility for a TIF request maybe from a tenant.
Could be. Item 9.9 is basically the parole evidence rule. It has to be in writing and in accordance with the contents of the document. There is one item I have not finished work on. I think it's very important. Is the answer to the question, what if the building stays vacant for a prolonged period of time? Under what terms and conditions can we negotiate with them over the terms of an abatement if they were to get one? It is a wonderful thing to have economic development in a small town because one building can make a real difference to people's tax bills in a positive way. It works the other way too. So if the building is vacant and they get a huge tax abatement, this building will be 10% of the total tax base of the town. So that's our rough estimate. The town's value is about $1 billion. This is about a $100 million asset. So if they get a very large abatement in the value, it would actually have a material impact on our budget and our budget forecasting process. So I want some things to be in this agreement around notice. So if they know they don't have a tenant, they have to provide us notice so that we can start the clock. If the law allows it, I would like to spread the pain of the abatement over more than 1 year so that we're not absorbing the full hit in 1 year if they have an abatement. I don't know, because this valuation of commercial properties can be complicated. I don't know which path, whether it's cap rate or, a depreciating asset or commercial return. I don't know who assigns which path and whether or not the entity can choose a path and change the path during the course of its useful life. I don't know. the answers to those questions. So I've posed them to the town's former assessor. When the new assessor starts, I'll be working with him to get an answer to that question.
Local services at DOR.
And local services at DOR. And in the meantime, CRG will be working in-house to see what they'd be willing to accept on that.
Can't do a pilot because we're not no nonprofit, or
No.
that would have been a nice way of.
So that was a long-winded explanation, but those are all the terms of the agreement. Are there any questions?
What's their expected timeframe to start?
So we would really like to finalize this agreement by July, the first week of July. And then we would go to closing on the property, because now all the issues that had to be resolved by town meeting around eminent domain of that small piece and our clarification of title for some of the pieces that lie in Uxbridge, that's all been finalized and completed. Everything's been filed at the Registry of Deeds. So our hope would be we'd go to closing right away, because the due diligence has been more than satisfied now by both sides. If they can get, we can get the purchase and sales agreement done in a timely fashion within a week or two after the development agreement is done, I expect to see a building permit application filed very shortly thereafter.
Yeah, the reason
Because
why I
they're
asked-
through permitting, planning, and Concom.
Reason why I ask is it's expected to do a code change on the building around January. Because we're in 2015, they'll skip over 18, go right to 21. So if they don't apply before then,
Yeah.
you'd have to change the wording of this from the 9th edition to the 10th. Or just put it current building code.
So, a lot of these projects are financed by investors, usually pension funds, that are extremely sensitive to interest rate fluctuations. So CRG really wants to hurry up and build this building so that they can lock in the rates that they have and that their return on investment is what they project it to be. If they wait too long, that might get eaten up by the interest rate increases.
They still optimistic on tenants, or?
Yeah. Yeah, there's still a lot of demand, notwithstanding one of the world's largest distributors having trouble right now. The others are not having the same problem. They're not overexposed to the same degree.
I think it's great that we put these into development agreement. So that, otherwise, instead of having 3 or 4 pieces of paper, to have one document that sort of covers everything, so. So we'll have the, try to figure out something with DOR by the
Yep.
next meeting. Good.
So that will be your base version for your agenda packet for July 5th. If I make any changes from that document, they would be redlined. They'll be called out.
And if we have any questions, you want them as soon as possible.
Please. Yeah.
Thank you. Number 6, Kevin.
Sorry about that, audio cut out. All right, so painting of Soldiers Field Clubhouse and possible votes.
This was Selectman Bonan's topic,
Yeah,
so we might
so-
have to skip it. He's been communicating with the film
Yeah.
company.
That's something that Selectman Bonin had called me and asked me just a technical question on. I guess the filming company wants to paint the clubhouse green. It's currently white. It's vinyl sided. The only concern that you may have is in the wintertime when the siding constricts or contracts, it's going to have little white lines on all the joints. So I told Tim to get some touch-up paint and be ready.
So we get a free paint job?
Get a free paint job. As long as you use 100% acrylic latex, it'll stick.
Not to be overly technical, but this piece of property is under the jurisdiction of the Recreation Commission, not you.
Okay. So
So-
scratch that off our,
Well, I'm glad it's here because it's being
I think
discussed in
did it
public.
as a courtesy, just,
I think he
To
had
bring
a
it along.
discussion with them as
Yeah.
well, so,
Yeah.
but I don't want to speak for him, so.
yeah. So what's your recommendation, pass over or vote on it?
Well, if
can vote
it's
to-
outside of our jurisdiction, we should probably just pass it over.
Yeah.
You
plus
can
Tim
signal your
isn't here
support for it if you want to support the Recreation
Yeah.
Commission's
I
decision.
would make a motion to support the decision of the Recreation Committee.
anyway. Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote?
Patrick, aye.
Davis, aye.
More side. All right, so the next is public safety and highway needs, next steps and possible votes. And I know this has shown up a few times.
Yeah, I tried to find the can that's been kicked down the road, and I wasn't able to locate it today, but if we can try to address this sometime soon, it would be helpful.
Hey,
I would look to Matt to understand what, because we don't have nothing in the budget for this, so how do we proceed with this?
I would say that once you decide the scope of the study that you want done, and we can write that up into a request for qualifications, you would go to fall town meeting. This would typically be a capital item put on the meeting warrant by the capital committee. And at that time, you would vote for funds. We will certify available free cash in October. That would be your funding source. It could, I mean, it's already almost the end of June. So if you could say, we want to post the warrant and have the finance committee resolve the special town meeting warrant in October, really, we've got maybe 3 months to work through the Building Facilities Committee and come up with the scope of this. The issues I put in my memo are the issues that I think need to be resolved before we can finish the work around scope. And that's why I think it could take 3 months. Because I think you, as a Board of Selectmen, I don't know that people fully grasp what I was trying, a point I wasn't making very eloquently when you first discussed this issue. But to size the building, you should try to grasp the impact of development on the town, what you expect the population of the town to be, and what your service delivery model would be in your police, fire, and ambulance departments, as well as highway. Because you don't want to build a building that's obsolete 10 years after you built it, because the town got so much bigger, and you said, well, we need space for 12 firefighters, and now all of a sudden, you need 15 to do the job.
Well, that's what the 3 departments had done during that committee. That was their task to do that. So are you saying that they didn't identify that in their report that they gave us?
Whether
Because of what it
they
did.
did or they did not, they certainly didn't do it to my satisfaction, because when I look at this, there's always a build-out analysis, a professional planner. That's why we wanted the community development director to start on the board, is you should be able to look somebody in the eye and say, based on current demographic projections, the town of Douglas will be 11,000 people 20 years from now, which is about what it says. Towns with 11,000 people generate typically X number of calls. It's usually a range, right? From X to Y number of calls for service. That will be in excess of our current calls for service. And then there's an inquiry into, well, are we staffed fully now for the calls that we have now? Or do we need more now and then even more in the future? We had a lot of conversation about the vehicle fleet, how it's housed, whether or not our current spaces are adequate for the current staff. I don't know that we ever dug into the sources of population projections and made a good assessment of. See, highway, I think, is going to be locked, because how many miles of road can we, I don't know that we're going to build many, many more miles of road to maintain. So plowing, we might add a route, but that's the most we would do, it's one person. But when you talk about adding people to shifts at police and fire, they each have 3 rotations or 4 rotations. So when you want the 24/7 coverage to be at a certain level, you're adding one person to each rotation. So it's a very large expense for the community.
They identified that in their projection. They went out 20 to 30 years. I'm a little confused as to why,
I don't know what it was based on. What is it based on?
I don't know.
No.
I would assume that, being the department heads and in the role that they're in, that they use logical data in order to come forward with their reports that they gave us. So basically, what you're telling me right now is we wasted 5 meetings.
No, you didn't. It's just, I think the select board, as the policy-setting board of the town, if you want to inquire any further into that, now's the time to do it, before we start spending money on studies. So, my professional obligation is to make sure that the people making decisions have all the information they need to make good decisions. So I never saw a report. There are only 2 demographic studies done in Massachusetts, MAPSI and the Donahue Institute. We didn't have any conversations about those forecasts. It happens that, so when I wrote this memo that's in your packet, they are not so far apart from each other where you don't have a sense of what the range of the population of the town is likely to be. On the low end, you could be about 10,200. If you look at the high end, about 12,600.
In what year?
2050, because you're going to build buildings with 30-year life expectancy. So that's about almost 30% bigger than you are today. And I didn't hear the number 30% come out. So that's why when I wrote this, I wanted to just keep pushing people's attention to when we ask people to fund multi-million-dollar building projects, we got to be able to look them straight in the face and say, we expect the demand on this building will be to service X service level, and that as the town grows, it won't outstrip the size of the building. You'll be continue to run your department out of the new building for that entire period, and it's money well spent, because in 30 years from now, you may stabilize at that same level and not have to build it ever again, because you've gotten close enough to build out where you don't have to. That's a vital part of the exercise. We, in my hometown, just funded a large police station, ended up costing $9.3 million. They were in what used to be a former bank building, like a former post office. It was a single floor with a basement, and we're a town of almost 16,000 people. And we were running 3 police cars, sometimes 4, out of this micro building. It was horrible, horrible working situation. When you let things go for too long, you start to have those issues. Documents get destroyed by mold and mildew and flooding. People don't like working in the environment, so you train them up, you spend all the money to train them, and they leave because they don't want to work there. You want to avoid all those issues from the get-go. I think the study that was done was very good, because everybody was forced to think about what they need, even just to run the department they have now. They have gone for so long making what they have work. They've never been asked the question, if you could just start today with what you have, what would you do? What are your needs for the staff you have now?
And I think that's.
That was a huge
I
obstacle.
think that's what they accomplished. And so I've been asking about this ever since we concluded that meeting, to find out what the next step is. And it's not necessarily go design a building, but you're going to need to bring in some sort of design professional to take the reports that we generated, whether they're inadequate, incomplete, or whatever the case may be, and use that as a basis to start with. Okay?
Yep.
The biggest mistake that most towns make, or most people in general with developments, is they go to the design professional and say, I need something, build it for me.
Yeah.
So you're paying for a portfolio. So the approach that I wanted to take this time was to give them a menu as to what our needs are. And I was very adamant with the 3 different departments to come forward with that information. Just, if you need a meeting room, how many people? Don't tell me what the size of the room is. There's a math equation for that. You don't need to tell me how many bathrooms you need and all that nonsense. Stick to what you actually need to run your department. And the police, the one that sticks in my head the most is like, we have everything we need, we just don't have enough space. But he also the chief put down what his staffing level is and ideally what it should be, and projecting out what he feels that it should be. That's why I was a little surprised when you said that.
No, I think police did it.
Yep.
I don't know that fire and ambulance, I don't know that we finished that conversation.
No, it's probably not 100%, but it's a good basis and for somebody to look at before you even get into a design thing, just like we did with the electrical on this building, and having somebody come in and just look at it and give us his assessment of it. You would do the same thing on this, and before you even get to a design, just somebody needs to look at it and say, you need 1 building, you need 2 buildings, you need 3 buildings, you renovate this, or you build this one. Whatever it is what we need, somebody that's with that level of experience, that's impartial to the whole thing and just comes forward, this is what I think. I think that's what the town actually needs. And then, to your point about going to town meeting and getting to spend money, have a solid, valid plan to go with, that you can look at everybody in the eye and say, yes, this is what I believe we need to do. And that's what we try to accomplish with that meeting. And I pushed them through it. We did it in 5 meetings. That was a pretty quick turnaround for the amount of information I try to get out of them. It's not going to be 100%, but it's pretty good. I think you got a lot of good information that you can use.
Oh, it's all good. I think where we're at now is just, what is your direction to the BFCC going to be? So if your direction is, as a select board, please create an RFQ for a design project, with the final resting point being calls 30% higher than they are today. And then they can have their meetings and get down to the nitty-gritty and work out the additional numbers with the department heads to write that RFQ. Because the RFQ won't issue if there's no funding, if the board doesn't support it. That's different than giving the BFCC the charge of, go out and get a design to better house the departments we currently have, or to not have the forecast be part of the discussion.
Well, the
Right.
forecast has to be part of it.
Has to be part of the discussion.
Huge, and that's what, we've had this conversation outside those meetings as well as in those meetings. And that's why I wanted the town planner on it, because he's involved with the land around. We don't want to build something on a piece of land that has no room to expand if we have to expand at a future date.
Can we draw upon Central Mass Regional for planning to help us with?
I think you could, but I think that was,
Studies that have done in other towns that would be good models to take a look at.
And just to be clear, the urgency, why I keep pushing this, we're sitting there with a trailer that's costing us a minimum of $1,200 a month. It can't stay there forever. So we got it because we had a problem. So we need to address that, and at the same time evaluate these other 2 departments to see what we can and need to do for all 3 of them.
so I did give you 2 options for a motion, because there's a nuance. As between the 2. And I guess the nuance is best summarized this way, that you could ask for the feasibility study to unfold in 2 phases. The first phase would be, look at everything we have already and just score it for the adequacy and for its usefulness as the basis for increasing the floor space available to these functions. Because, and then phase 2 would be the more broadly defined, all right, if you've come to the conclusion and the town agrees that your existing buildings just won't do it, then what's the best way to go forward? As opposed to option A, which jumps right, pretty much straight to phase 2 and says, just look at doing something new and different.
I think it has to look at what we already have. That's sort of the basis. People are going to ask, well, why isn't this adequate or that?
You know, it's a mixed bag, I guess. You know the existing highway building doesn't do the
Pretty
job,
obvious.
and it's too small, and the property itself is already too crowded.
Yeah.
The fire department is a completely different situation. The existing footprint of the building might be useful, but you could add on to it or not, right? You need somebody who's got that experience building those buildings, saying, well, if your septic's over here and your electric's over here, this is your actual remaining building envelope, but you could add to that one. But with police, you have to start from scratch. Or with police, you can do first floor of the municipal center and move town government upstairs. Somebody's got to pay attention to all those moving parts to assess
Yeah, somebody
whether or not they
needs to
function.
evaluate it. So you come down to the building, you just touched on the septic system and the electric and stuff like that. So with the fire department, all 3 of the departments, because of the size of the building, they're gonna need to be sprinkled. We don't have water up there that'll handle that. Bob, during one of his things to bring the sewer line up, I had it up here somewhere. $2 to $2.5 million to bring the sewer line up to the highway department. That's cheaper than building a whole building somewhere else. So it kind of makes sense to do it. So that's what we need a design professional to look at, to evaluate the different options, so then they can guide building and facilities, the Board of Selectmen, or whoever it is that they're going to work with, maybe jointly, or everybody is involved in it. But we get back to, we need somebody that can evaluate what our options are first before we get into trying to design a building or adding on to a building. We don't know what the options are. I could guess at them, you could guess at them, but I think somebody that does that for a living would be better suited for it.
You just have a much more complicated situation than we had in Westport. Westport, the police department was too small. So the only question was, what would a new building look like?
Right.
Not that we didn't have any other assets in town that could serve as a police station, none.
Right.
Whereas the neighboring community here, North Smithfield, Rhode Island, has just gone through a real, let's call it a parade,
Yeah.
an all-hits parade over whether or not to reuse the old municipal annex or build a new police station, to improve the annex or to build a new police station. And because the governing board didn't have a consensus about what they were charging the design consultant to do, the design consultant did what they thought was the question presented, and they came to a town meeting, and there was a lot of disagreement, because they weren't scoped from the beginning on what it was that they were supposed to look at, and the alternatives that they wanted presented. So the point of my memo is how to charge the BFCC and the town administrator to research the things that you want done in the order you want them done. So if you really feel like the uncertainty, there's so much unoccupied space that's owned by the town of Douglas, you want to resolve that issue first before you think about anything more grand. That would be option B of the motion. If you have a consensus as a board that that's just a waste of time, the existing buildings are just never going to be cost-effective, then let's not spend any money looking at existing buildings and just go straight to what you think the conclusion is. You'll be more efficient. The one thing about the financial opportunity for the town is here now. It may not be here 3 years from now. So because of the economic development activity and where our budget stands today, we're generating enough free cash to improve our balances in our bond rating so that if we wanted to recommend to the public that they borrow money to build a building, this next year, year and a half is the time to do it. Because if the Fed has to get aggressive with interest rates, you may be looking at 6%, 7% money, even with a tax-exempt muni, and that's way more expensive than the 3% we could probably get today. Because our bond rating is probably, we're at a spot where we could ask for it to be higher than it is now because of our financial strength. So if we're going to borrow, we should borrow now, because once all the projects are built and the budget starts to fill itself out, you may not have the same reserves, the same financial margins 5 years from now that you have right now. So the time to act, there is a window in which to act, which is best for the town.
So listening to everything that you said, it almost makes sense to make a recommendation to forward this to the BFCC, have a fresh set of eyes look at it, and then they can come back to us with it, and then hopefully get it onto the fall town meeting if they have enough time to get through it. That makes sense to you guys?
That
Yeah.
makes the most sense to me. I mean, long story short, Mike, I just want to, I want to try and keep this moving as fast as we can. You know, I mean, to Matt's point, like, this opportunity for additional revenues and things, the financial position that we're in, I don't see it's going to last that long. So we need to be in a position to be able to strike as quick as we can once that becomes available.
Yeah, it just takes so long for things that happen once you initiate them. That's why I'm trying to get
Yeah.
it. That's why I'm trying to get it initiated, because it's going to be a process. So I would make a motion to refer this to the BFCC for their evaluations and recommendations back to us.
I'll second it. So the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye.
Thanks for your work on that, Pat.
So we're on to approve minutes and possible votes?
Can we pass over those? Oh, no, we have Jean is waiting patiently. We have item number 3 that we need to talk about.
Okay.
Review
Yeah,
and
so
approve.
Review and approve intra-department transfers and reserve fund transfers and possible votes. I was stammering on that one, I apologize. Hi, Gene.
Good evening, how are you?
Good.
Sitting in a very low chair. Feel like I'm,
That's David's chair.
oh my word.
You want another one?
No, it's fine. Oh,
No, you're perfect. Now, go ahead.
gee whiz. There'll be no reserve fund transfers, those are done at
Does
the
this make you
finance.
more comfortable?
The finance committee level. Gee whiz. So we'll only be addressing the intra-departmental transfers. These can be done in the last 2 months of the fiscal year. I typically do not like to do them, not because it's not an important tool, but we usually like to handle everything at town meeting, at the spring town meeting. But these items came in after that town meeting. So I don't know if you want me to just run through them, or if you have an order. Lisa gave them to you in packets if you want to take them in any particular order.
Just run through them, Gene.
Okay. The first one is to, from the assessors salary to the economic development salary account. This is for Mr. Monerick, has put in more hours than was budgeted, and this, in order to attain the grants, and this would allow him the funds to be able to complete the fiscal year. So the amount requested is $1,592.
Okay. Pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Can we vote on them all at once in a group?
Yeah.
unless somebody has
Yeah.
an objection.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Just package them together.
The second, and this is, both of them are to the IT department. One is for $9,000 from the civil defense account, and the second one is for $6,000 from the community development wage account. Both of these are going to the IT. This is a twofold issue. One is we had the planning, zoning, and conservation portion of the e-permitting that was not eligible for the CARES grant because we had a vacancy in that department, so we just didn't meet the timeline. However, the vendor did drop the software on our computer, so we have the accessibility to it, therefore we have to pay for it. The second piece to that is the $20,000 for the annual maintenance cost for that. Again, you know, they told me it was like me buying a car, and I bought the car and I left it at the dealership. Just because I left it at the dealership doesn't mean my warranty extends. So I did talk with the vendor, but we are responsible for the full $20,000. There is some money in the IT budget, but again, those are the two reasons why this is needed at the IT departmental level.
You said CARES Act. Did the rules change, or you said there was a vacancy?
The vacancy in our staff. So
Okay.
when we were doing the e-permitting, Mr. Cundiff had left. So originally, it was thought that we would do building, zoning, conservation, and planning at the same time. But because Mr. Cundiff was no longer at the town, they did the building department. But the other piece of that had to happen, and because they provided the software, we have to pay for that piece.
Right.
But originally,
So
we
that has nothing to do with the CARES Act.
Well, we charged the building piece to the CARES Act because we had it up and running. So it was during COVID, allowed the residents availability to access the permits and still, stay away from the building because the building was closed to the public. But we couldn't charge this to the CARES Act.
We have a strong disagreement with the Department of Revenue on this particular issue.
I do too, on a daily basis.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not going to win because they are the DOR.
Yeah, I just wanted clarity of
We
whether or not the rules
contracted
changed.
for e-permitting software before a state of emergency was declared for COVID, period. We did not fully implement the building piece of this until we were in the pandemic. We did a lot of extra work to improve the product because of COVID, because we couldn't do
Right.
in-person inspections and have the interactions in the office, because we're apart. But as far as DOR is concerned, because you entered into a business relationship with the software provider before the state of emergency, even though you did all this work during the pandemic to make it work for people, and we didn't lose any revenue, we didn't miss a single permit, still didn't qualify in their minds, because technically, we were outside of the eligibility date. We had
They go
sought,
back to the original contract.
we sought advice like a lot of other towns. We're all going to be saying the same thing. We thought you said that this was an eligible expense. It's when they sharpen their pencil after they've sent you the money, and then they start saying, well, technically, it's not exactly what we wanted, so you have to pay for it. It's a little bit of, it was in the budget, so the town raised the money to buy these items. When it came time to pay for them, we paid for them with CARES Act funds. And we used those funds either for other purposes or we closed them to free cash. I don't know exactly what happened to it.
Well, this isn't even addressing what you're
But-
talking about. Yeah.
Right. But it's not like we never thought we'd have to pay for it. So we saw the CARES Act as a better way to fund the project because it helped us deal with the pandemic.
Yeah.
But they're not impressed. So we're going to have to agree to disagree.
We do have, this is the 9,000 in addition to the building, though. So this is the
We
CARES.
never implemented planning, conservation, and zoning.
Correct. So the original building e-permitting is still charged against the CARES Act. It is still in the process of going through the desk audit. I do not know the outcome of that yet. So it may come back where the town will be responsible
Yeah.
to pay back those funds. But this is not that. This is the $9,000 that was never implemented during the timeframe of the CARES because we did not have the staff in order to implement it. So this was that in addition to the maintenance agreement that was an annual cost, which is a little over $20,000, that we will be responsible each year for, and that will be funded under the IT budget. Now, because of the timing, Dave wasn't aware of the $20,000 for the maintenance cost, and they sent the bill in March, so I had missed the town meetings. So,
Yeah.
so that's why the need of the $15,000.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
coming
part of
from
my
these
questioning
resources.
is just to make sure that the rules didn't change on the CARES Act, because we're currently talking about the ARPA fund, so the
Well-
back of my mind is to make sure we don't pigeonhole ourselves.
And
that's all.
Matt's correct, they do change the rules. So we did seek advice, we did ask, can we charge again, I'm going back to the building, and it is charged there, we are going through the desk on it now. They did say yes, because it's e-permitting, it's allowing the
Yeah.
residents to access it, you're closed to the public here. It was done during the time frame of the CARES, so it met that qualification. So, yes, they are changing the rule.
Right.
And that's why we have tried, collectively, have tried to take a very conservative approach to how we spend the CARES money,
Right.
knowing that it's going to go through audits.
Yeah.
And I thought we were pretty conservative even with the e-permitting, because we were closed to the public.
Right.
So I was very surprised that they're even, questioning that, but I guess nothing should surprise me. But we still try to take a conservative approach.
Yeah.
Because nothing said we had to finish it. The part that we finished, nothing said we had to finish it, because we weren't here.
Right.
Well, I was here and building official was here, but you know what I'm saying? We didn't have to have the work group together to
Right.
finish it. We plowed ahead and finished it anyway because it was necessary as part of the response. Like I said, it didn't impress them much.
So we'll let you know how the outcome of the desk
Yeah,
audit
I'm
comes.
just curious.
Yeah, but they do change the rules. So those, it's the same purpose, they're both going to management information system, they're just coming from two different transfers, one, again, from the community development salaries, and I thought that was appropriate. I tried to take things where they seem fit, it's for their department. The second is, again, because of the vacancy and the principal assessors, I'm sorry, this is civil defense, again, for the same reason.
Right.
It's in response to the pandemic, that's, one of the reasons why we started, so that was that transfer. The next one is,
Well, we had budgeted for completion of the public safety radio project earlier than it has happened. So there was money left in civil defense that would have been for ongoing maintenance of the public safety radio project. But that's not done yet, so the money was there to transfer.
the other one is ambulance from salaries to expense. Again, at town meeting, we vote salary and expense separately. They can't take one from the other without any kind of transfer being approved. So this is going from $9,000 from the ambulance salaries to the ambulance expense, and this is for unforeseeable costs in the fuel as well as maintenance and repairs. And I don't know the outcome of this one. I put this in case the board approved a stipend up to $5,000 for the town administrator. This is coming from the assessor's salary to the selectmen's stipend account in the amount of $5,000. Again, I was doing it just so I could have it available should it be approved and voted for this fiscal year. If it's not voted, then it will close into free cash.
No, that has to be done at this meeting, doesn't it?
It has to be done,
Because your pay period ends now? Because we don't have another meeting before the end of the fiscal year.
Mike, it's under his report, we have TA goals. So I think that would be probably where we would go under that, wouldn't it?
Well,
But no,
actually,
in order for them to be compensated, it has to
Yeah.
be done in the last pay
Yeah.
period of the fiscal year.
I have to pay, the board may award a stipend to the town, it should be administrative up to $5,000 to be paid in lump sum in the last pay period of the fiscal year.
Well, that's what we agreed, so why don't we, I don't see,
I thought it was in the motion after my evaluation.
yeah.
What the minutes?
I don't
what are
have the minutes
You don't have the
from
minutes?
Was
Stephanie.
the amount voted on?
No.
I don't,
You don't think so?
I'd have to look back. I don't have minutes from her yet, and
okay. So that is why I'm seeking this. Again, if it,
Yeah, and all I'm trying to do is making sure it's addressed, so
Yeah.
we don't leave this
good.
meeting and then,
Yeah, well, even if we do it twice, it's no big deal, better than not doing it at all, so. We should have a motion on all of the transfers, that's all of them?
that is all of them.
make a motion to approve the transfers as reported by the finance director.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. So, and Mike, you were saying that there was a question on,
I just want to make sure that we address it as far as Matt's additional stipend that he can receive. I didn't remember voting on it. Matt thinks that we did vote on it. Hal doesn't see a problem in voting on
Yeah,
it twice.
yeah.
It's not on our agenda. Are we allowed to do it?
Or you'd have to call us.
yeah, under 13.
Well, we're doing the transfers. It's on the transfer list, right?
But that's a different
That's
vote.
your
This is
funding
just putting the
Or
funding
does it
source.
Ah, okay.
Or does it happen under 14?
We would do it under 13. If we're agreeing that he's eligible and received his bonus, it would be open session. That wouldn't fall under executive session.
Okay.
So we'll do it under 13 now? In 3 places.
So to recap, it's $1,592 from assessors salary to economic development salary, $6,000 from community development salaries to management information systems, $9,000 from civil defense expense to management information systems, $9,000 from ambulance wages to ambulance expense, and $5,000 from assessor salary to selectmen's stipend.
Excellent. All right. So we're all set on transfers. We voted on that. Brings us to minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
You got
we have
this.
to
Is
pass
this what you're
because they're
doing tonight?
executive, and Kevin has not read them.
No,
I don't send those in the
No.
packets.
that's not what I'm doing tonight.
So want to postpone, we don't need.
Make a motion to pass
I
over the
have- I didn't
minutes,
see that
Kevin,
email.
because
I
you
may
don't
have
have the
gotten it, I just
executive
didn't see
minutes,
it.
and we're missing 2 members.
Second.
It was
That's
last week.
fine.
I'll have to look for it.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. That would bring us to your report, Mr. Administrator.
So, I'm going to, Mr. Chairman, I emailed this to you. We discussed at our last meeting that we would, it was put in terms of
Thanks.
goals for the town administrator, but in all honesty, they're goals for the town. And it's what we're going to try to accomplish together. Again, I'm not really looking for ratification of this list tonight. I'd rather go over it and have some, July 5th be the finalization of this list. But I want to take more than a college try at listing the things that we want to accomplish in the short to medium term. Item number 1 is to complete the implementation of e-permitting for planning, zoning, and conservation. We not only had a transition in the planning function, we had a transition with the building official as well during the same time frame. So he focused on getting building done, but he also is responsible for zoning. So we have to make sure that we complete this out. The idea is to get every application we have that's going to be processed by staff here, recorded electronically, and tracked electronically so that we can use the benefits of the software in terms of reminders and circulation and all the rest, but also so that our documentation and our archiving can be accurate and timely. And store these documents in a way that we can access them during meetings, and that the applicant can do work on these things no matter what hour of the day it is. So if it's an engineer working on a subdivision, they can grind away at it and upload their filing and not be beholden to when town hall is open or closed. That was always been the idea behind e-permitting, and has been a huge success in terms of the building
Yeah,
department.
there's only positives that comes over.
Only positives. In fact,
You
more
look at
people,
some of the things that are required, that you get the meetings, and
yeah,
it's not fair to the board or the committee and
but
the applicant.
compliance is up. And that's more of an issue with building than with anything else, but
Yeah.
we made it easier for people, so they actually use it. This is in no particular order, but once you have an assessment of your sidewalk conditions, which was part of our road study with Stantec, we also did sidewalks and signs. The next step after that is you should have a plan for addressing the problems with different pieces of sidewalk. That protects the town from liability if you have a plan and you are implementing the plan, however incrementally. You're not expected to fix every sidewalk in town all at once. You are expected to make progress against it. And when you do that, you protect yourself from liability. So since I do walk the sidewalks quite a bit, almost daily, I notice, there are some things that we should probably be getting after. The compensation system reform is something we've discussed at some great length. I want to get it onto special town meeting in November so that I can use it as the basis for a budget next May. We have an open question. State statute allows the finance committee, finance department division heads, so the principal assessor, the treasurer, the collector, the town accountant, to have an employment contract that's separate and apart from your compensation table. The difficulty I'm having in rectifying supervisory responsibilities and management of assets to a level of management compensation, particularly for department heads, is that in the finance department, you may not be running a building, you may not have a vehicle fleet, you may not have very many staff people reporting to you, but you are in fact processing payroll at the tune of $700,000 every 2 weeks. And the accuracy and transparency of all that record keeping is a huge responsibility. How do I draw those things and put them, people in the same category? It's not that it can't be done, it's that it's challenging to do. It would be much cleaner to take advantage of the statute, work with the municipal finance director to establish the rates of pay for her staff, and treat that as one separate department, and then have all the other functions lined up along their management responsibilities. So that's an open question for the select board. Another open question is, how do you incorporate education and experience or longevity? Do you put it into the base rates as you go through the compensation table, or do you want them to be a freestanding separate item? Example, your police union contract has an education incentive. You have an associate's, you get a certain amount. You have a bachelor's, you get a certain amount. You have a master's, you have a certain amount. My personal view is that if it's part of the minimum qualifications of the job description, there is no basis for paying an incentive for it. So for example, if you would only hire a town administrator who has a master's degree, then you shouldn't have a master's degree incentive for the position, because you can't get the position without the degree. But if you don't have a degree requirement, we all have to think, what is the value to the town of the extra education or experience? And how do you factor that in? You could go out, let's say you had a vacancy, I don't like to use real positions, but let's say your fire chief position was vacant tomorrow, and we decided to do an intergalactic search for the replacement. How would you, it's not set up with a degree requirement right now. You don't have to have a bachelor, you don't have to have an associate's. Just have to have a minimum amount of time in a leadership position in the fire department and the proper training. That's run through the fire service, but isn't necessarily a degree program. But you can also go through the educational process and get a master's in fire science. So what is it that you want to do? How do you want to reward that level of qualification coming in to the conversation? That's an open question. And then if you have contract employees, what are our merit targets? So how do you measure successful service with a contractual employee so that you can build in, I don't want to call it steps, but that's really what it is. They're merit steps that become a permanent part of the base, which you don't currently have with the step system, which is based almost entirely on longevity. So that's a long-winded thing, but the comp reform is a big deal. A lot of towns hire out and spend a lot of money on studies. I just don't think we need to do that. We don't have enough people to justify that kind of expense. But these are the kinds of issues that we have to deal with. Then fourth on the list, but it's probably top priority for everybody, and we've already talked about it, is the Public Safety Highway Department building discussion. And the following bullet point dovetails with that. So what is the staffing plan? The one thing I'm trying to work with the chiefs on is that increasing staffing in their departments to the extent possible should be a gradual process, so that we're not hitting annual town meeting with this huge increase in one department. Well, we're going to add 3 people and each person's 70,000 plus the health insurance is another 25. 3 times 95 is $285,000. That's almost the entire levy increase for 1 year, to give people a sense of the proportion. But if you say, we want to start with, in the police department example, the day shift, we want to eventually get to X number of people on 24/7, but we would start with the day shift when the kids are in school and businesses are running and there's a lot of traffic in town. You fill that one position in 1 year, then when's the next one? Or do you staff a swing shift? How does the chief want to achieve that gradual implementation? That's a necessary part of budget planning for the town of Douglas for the next 5 years. It has to be discussed. The basic rule of thumb in municipal administration is that you can get along with X number of public safety personnel until you get to about 10,000 to 12,000 people. In math, it's called the step function. So I reach a certain point, I jump up. I reach a certain point, I have to jump up. In municipal life, it's between 10 and 12,000 people. You have to take a long look at the calls for service and make sure you're properly staffed for them, so that the people who are on the job already are safe and that the public is protected, gets the response times and quality of response that they expect. That's usually where the rubber meets the road, between 10 and 12,000. Another goal would be, working with the library trustees to make some progress on their ADA project in the building. It goes without saying, the library is a valuable and valued asset in town. I think during the pandemic, it was a huge resource to people, a source of entertainment and intellectual stimulus outside of being locked in your house all the time. And the staff there also stepped up and helped the entire town, whether it was calling shut-ins or providing other support services to the emergency response. It was the library staff that helped us. The building itself is kind of a charming old building, which also means that it's an abomination if you have a handicap, because you can't use the place. And we just got to get to the modern era. There's expertise around the town that needs to be leveraged into getting a good solution for the design of their design. So what is it that you're going to ask a design professional to design for you? I think the town has to have a voice in that conversation. The trustees ultimately can decide because they raise the money, it's their building. But they might benefit from the different processes we have at town level. I feel very strongly about updating our computer, the so-called GIS, Geographic Information System. So in the world of computers, we can take a map and we can record where almost any asset is, right? Where a fire hydrant is, where a traffic sign is, where a water pipe is, just by using the coordinates, the geographic coordinates, longitude, latitude. arranged in a database that we can then query. So if we're in the middle of an emergency and we say, oh my gosh, that whole part of town is looking at a huge brush fire, it's in the hydrant district, how much pressure and flow do we get at each one of those hydrants? All that information is at your fingertips if you put it in. We put a lot of information in, and I feel bad because Adam Furno especially did a huge amount of work putting information into GIS, but we were using a free copy, if you will, a promotional copy of the GIS software that was upgraded, so everything Adam did was lost, which is unfortunate. Now, the good news is, because he's so diligent, he's got everything written down. So we still have the information, it's just not in GIS. Both our new community development director and our new principal assessor have extensive backgrounds in GIS. So my expectation is that the assessing department, the division, along with community development, the water department, and the fire department, will put all our heads together and have a good database for the town, where everything is, so that if some senior member of the highway staff no longer works for us and moves away, we're not lost without that knowledge. We got to have that knowledge.
Maybe it's my ineptitude, but I do find the GS system is a little tricky, particularly trying to assess values and the like. It's
Yeah.
not
It's not
friendly
intuitive.
in other towns.
No, ours is outdated,
Yeah.
but the next one is something Selectman Fitzpatrick's talked about a lot, is get the mechanism in place for specific purpose stabilization funds. Not only do the funds have to be established, there's usually helps to have a policy in place for how the funds will be used. It's that you adopt. Then the last 3 bullet points, one is energy planning. The world is changing very rapidly, and the world we grew up with, it's cold, call the oil company, they'll deliver 300 gallons, 275 gallons, put it in your tank, you pay the bill, you turn the boiler on, you get warm. It was so simple and easy, and it was frustrating to deal with the price of oil going up and down, but that's the world we lived in. Major policymakers are trying to change the way the world works. I'm not going to try to change their mind one way or the other from the local level, or whether they're going too fast or too slow is none of our business, really. We have to adapt to the world they're creating. And the world they're creating is very supportive of solar power, very supportive of microgrids, which are smaller, self-reliant sources of power for local areas that may or may not be connected to the grid, or can be disconnected from the grid and run on its own. Those so-called microgrids are part of the buzzwords around policy planning around energy. What is the role of the municipality? How far do you want to go? Do you want the town of Douglas to own solar fields and battery backup stations and electrical vehicle charging stations, or do you want the private sector to take care of it? Do you want to have a municipal light and power department to handle all that stuff or not? Do you want to have a private partner? And then lastly, a facilities plan. We have done a lot of work in Douglas already to green our buildings up, but they are legacy buildings. So we still have some obstacles to tackle to be as efficient as we can be. We should have a plan for that, because, to jump to one point below, both the administration in Washington and the likely new administration in Massachusetts are probably going to push a lot of grant funding towards energy efficiency, even more than the Baker administration has. We're probably going to see a lot of money flowing to these electrification, solar, energy storage solutions. And the way you get grant money is to participate in the policy.
Maybe that fits in nicely with our new facilities that we're talking about.
That's exactly it. I mean, it should be part of the conversation. If you want to build a new building, it's going to be way more efficient than anything that we already have. And yet now the trend in the environmental community is to say, there's a lot of carbon load in your existing buildings.
Yeah.
So don't tear them down because you spent all that carbon building what you have. So just use what you have. Don't build anything new. It seems like if, it depends which day you tune into the policy, which one you're going to follow. Grants, we will continue to pursue Green Communities, Mass Works, and then I would like to spend extra time with the Community Development Department looking at the so-called Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, a lot of which has to do with the response to climate change. For us in Massachusetts and in a town like Douglas, it's stormwater management. If storms are likely to be more violent but shorter in duration, dropping huge amounts of rainfall in a small period of time, are our current assets sized to deal with that, as opposed to the 3-day rainstorm that would drop half an inch a day? Then lastly, on my list so far, we need a path to address our medium to long-term staffing requirements. We are still understaffed in highway. We barely cover what we're trying to do. And even though we've given John authority to replace somebody early, once he gets his retirement in, he'll be back to his base staffing level. Facilities, I think we've talked about both facilities and HR as something that the superintendent of schools and I have discussed at some length, is something we want to share. So we don't need to each hire an HR person. We would like to share an HR person to do all the policies, onboarding, benefit administration, all the things that the treasurer's department currently does, in addition to the functions of the Treasury. So they're processing payroll, processing payments, doing all the things that a treasurer is supposed to do in terms of reconciliation of accounts and truing things up. And on top of that, they're doing some personnel administration, which is, they're really not the same bailiwick. So I'm looking for guidance either to prioritize these items, or to add to these items, or take something off that you don't think is important. But your decision will largely guide our activity as your staff, not only for 1 year, but really more for like 3 years.
The goal is to have this for you for next meeting.
Yep.
That would be my plan, Mike.
In terms of report,
Menu.
Can you, sorry, can you email this to Tim and Dave?
Yeah.
Make sure they have a copy of it.
yeah. In terms of a report, I'll be really quick. The construction's going along very, very smoothly along Gilboa. We've always said North Street might be the most challenging. We're starting work in that area, and we'll see what happens once we open up the ground and see what's underneath all that pavement. As I said, we've gotten some preliminary indications that we're well below budget with the work, which is very encouraging. I'm looking forward to having the town fully staffed up with a principal assessor on board and resolving some of the transition at Highway and everything the first week of July. I think that's going to be, it's taken a lot of work to get through this rollover in staff, but it's been worth it. I think we're in a good position now. I don't want to belabor many of these topics much more. It's year end. Clearly, we are at the end of the budget year, resolving the house cleaning like we did tonight on any number of items. The ARPA stuff is still outstanding, so I'm hoping at July 5th we can have some more clarity around the process. So that's another item for the agenda that day.
Okay.
I do not think we need executive session tonight.
How about number 13, we were going to do the,
13, yeah, we got to do that. I didn't know.
Yeah, are you all set with your report, Matt?
Yeah.
All right, so under open session topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of the meeting, we have the item of the bonus based off of Matt's review and performance.
move
Anybody
approval,
care to make a motion on that?
and move approval for the,
Yeah, before we do that, I just got a question, just for clarity. So there's, on that stipend, there's two parts to it. One is for grants, and the other one is for economic development. Is that correct?
I think it's the way it reads.
Yeah. So the grants are the Mass Works and all that other stuff that we've
I think
accomplished.
it was measured by both, whether it was either grants or.
It didn't say either or. I think it's worded as both of them.
Yeah.
It's right here.
Is
Yeah.
it worded as both?
It's attainment of grant funds and enlargement of revenue
Yeah.
opportunities for the
Both,
town
either one.
during the course of the fiscal year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it fits within,
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't fit in. It's just two reasons: clarity in my own mind, and also to put it out there what we're even talking about. So obviously, we've attained the grant set, with the brush truck, the Mass Works, and all these other ones that's come through. The other part of it is the economic development, and
We've done that as
Matt
well.
said, what's that?
we seem to have done that as well.
Yeah, I just want
Yeah.
to, let me finish my sentence. I'm not trying to be rude or nothing, but there's a reason why I'm saying it. So Matt explained earlier that we're about to finally enter into the purchase and sales for that land, that check's been sitting in there. We're going to get into the development that's going to happen before the end of the year. So in my opinion, we've achieved, or the town administrator's achieved that role. So again, I don't want to vote on something without having it out there so people understand what we're even talking about.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I'm going through that, Hal. So I would make a motion to approve his stipend of the $5,000 as written in his contract.
Second, I would say just as an aside, we've overachieved what we would have hoped for when this
We
happened.
reached our goals. We never overachieve.
Well,
We're reaching our goals. So it's a team effort. Everybody's
Yeah.
working together to get it done. Mr. Chairman, you have a motion and a second on the table.
All right, is there any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye. So, and Matt, you're feeling we do not need executive session this evening?
No, there's nothing pressing.
No,
No.
we're gonna we'll do the, review the contracts for next meeting.
Okay. So based off of that, anybody have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing as none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Davis, aye.
Morris, aye.